What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Let's Ask Paul, the podcast where I, Paul Abernathy, attempt to answer all of your pressing electrical questions submitted to me through our online portal over at paulabernathy.com. That's PAULABERNATHY.com. Now, feel free to submit me any electrical question you have on the National Electrical Code, whether it's the 2017, 2020, the 2023, or any earlier code cycle if you want. I don't mind doing the research and looking up something for you. If it helps get you the answer, that's what I'm all about. But thanks for taking the time out of your day to join me here on the podcast. Hopefully you've downloaded our free mobile app that you can listen to the podcast on the go. You can stream it to your Bluetooth devices, all from your cell phone or tablet. Just download it by going to our website, fasttracksystem.com. You'll see the mobile link in the top right. If you're on the device itself, then you'll see the three little hamburgers on the right, up top right. Go click on that, and then you'll see it pop up on the left, and you'll see mobile app. And that's where you get the mobile app. You can also go directly to our download page, which is www.necchat.com as well, if you'd like to download it that way. Now, it's a dynamic link, so you actually can click on that link if you're on a desktop, and it'll actually show our app on your entire desktop. But it's designed to be optimized for your cell phone or a tablet, so check that out. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and it's got a lot of great features in there like resources and calculators and stuff like that. Of course, you can also chat with us through that app. We have a chat now feature if you want to send us a question or something directly. All the members that have the mobile app will see it. So it's a great way to interact with all of the folks that have downloaded and you're using our mobile app. Now, remember, the app is a PWA, so it's not going to put anything in your phone other than a button that allows you to get to the information quickly. So remember that. We're not trying to download any software onto your computer. All right. So today's episode, I wanted to kind of talk about something that I promised that I would talk about that has to do with the single gang boxes and the exception that applies to that. Whereas if you have a 2 1/4 by 4 inch nail up box, for example, and it has a tab in the back, which again, we'll talk about whether that's a knockout or whether or not that's considered a securement method by the manufacturer of the box. We're going to talk about that today because, again, there's a lot of stuff out there about this, and I have my own opinions of it and what I believe that most electricians do. And so I want to talk about that and how it would be approached. But the importance of this, when people say, is this a petty thing, that little tab on the back of those nail-up boxes, whether it's a Carlon or a Cantex, they go, Paul, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal about it is if you're using non-metallic sheath cable, that you typically, if you're following the rules in 334.30 for non-metallic sheath cable, you're going to need to secure that NM cable within 12 inches if it has a clamp on the box. Well, the reason we're talking about this is because there's an exception that's in the code that talks about, well, what happens if there is no clamp on the box and the box is of a certain size? What do we do with it? And so that's kind of the genesis of what we're talking about today. And I'm going to get into some of the nuances. And again, I am totally aware that there are two different camps on this. And there's people that swear it's so emphatically that it's simply a KO, a knockout. And there are others that are simply say, no, the manufacturer says it's a clamp or it can be used as a clamp. So we're going to kind of dig into my feelings on this. And again, you can agree to disagree. That's totally up to you. But we're going to look at it from a perspective of what does the National Electrical Code say? Because at the end of the day, when I post stuff like this, it's to make you think, because the AHJ is the one that has to make the decision, right? They're the ones that are going to look at this and say, okay, well, if you're following the allowances, it has a clamp on it, then you can go all the way up to 12 inches before you secure that cable to the framing member. Whereas if it's just a knockout, then you have an allowance exception, if you will, that says, okay, well, you have to secure it as it leaves that KO and goes up. It has to be within 8 inches. Now, where's that in the code? So if you've got your code books, what you're going to be looking for, and I'm in the 2020 edition of the National Electrical Code for this episode, you're going to be going to 314.17b, and that is boxes and conduit bodies. And then under that, you'll notice that there's a B2, and it talks about conductors entering through a cable clamp. Now, it talks about where cable assemblies and with non-metallic sheathing are used, and again, we're talking NMB, non-metallic. It says the sheath shall extend not less than 1/4 of an inch inside the box and beyond any cable clamp, except as provided in 300.15c. And basically that's where the conductors are coming in. Let's say a cable's coming in through a raceway anyway, maybe for physical damage protection, things like that. Then you really kind of don't need to secure any cable to the box because it's literally protected by being in the raceway, right? And it says the wiring method shall be secured to the box or conduit body. So basically, cables, when brought to a box, get secured to the box. How there's an exception to that. And the exception under 314.17b2 says where non-metallic sheath cable is used with single gang non-metallic boxes, okay, so key, it's non-metallic, not larger than 2 1/4 by 4 inches. So we're talking a typical single gang nail-up box. Mounted in walls or ceilings, and where the cable is fastened within 8 inches of the box, measured along the sheath, and where the sheath extends through the cable knockout, not less than 1/4 of an inch. Securing the cable to the box shall not be required. Okay, so that's the exception. So many of the manufacturers out there make single gang nail-ups, and I use 2 of the main manufacturers, Carlon, which I believe is owned by, daggone it, I'm drawing a blank. Carlon, overall ABB, I think. And then Cantex is owned by Cantex. And they both make boxes. Now, some of the single gang, most of the ones from Cantex have this little V-shaped insert where it's kind of like has a little gap in it and it's V-shaped, and you push the cable in it and it literally presses against it, and that will hold and restrict the cable. So that's a clamp. And it's built into the non-metallic box. So obviously that's a clamp. So then the staple, let's just say, that you're securing, you wouldn't be using this exception. You'd just be securing it within 12 inches. Now, you could secure it at 8, 10, 11, 7, 6. It doesn't matter. It just can't be more than 12 inches away, right? Now, the question comes in with the boxes like the Carlon box. And I've seen them in 2 ways, right? I've seen some of the Carlon boxes with the knockout in the back, and I'll call it a knockout because on some of them, there's no ribs or there's nothing. It's just a flat piece of plastic. And the typical thing that an electrician does is they'll take the backside of their side cutters or screwdriver, whatever, and just pop that out. And if it's totally removed, then obviously it's a KO. And so if that's the case, then that's fine. As long as 1/4 of an inch of your sheathing goes into the box, and you secure that cable within 8 inches, you're good to go. That's what the exception's all about in 314.17b2, the exception. Now, what we've got is that Carlon also, and they have multiple boxes, by the way, and if you go look at Carlon, they will actually give you like 4 or 5 different examples of their nail-up boxes and things like that. And we're looking at the single gang box, again, the 2 1/4 by 4 inch box. That has little grooves on the tab. So if you look at the literature from Carlon, and again, this is where the reason I bring this up, because I know the practice of an electrician is just to pound it out. And in that the case, it's a knockout. And that's when this rule is going to come into play, and you just secure it within 8 inches. Okay, it's not going to change the world, but it is what it is. Now, the manufacturer for those boxes that have the tabs that are to also be used as a clamp actually states on their literature that it contains clamps. Well, now some people say, well, spinning it to the side is the intent of that, and I don't believe that is the intent of that. I believe that the intent is you're only supposed to remove one side of the connecting membrane for that tab. You move one side of it. And then the tab is still there even though you remove one side. It just still hangs there because of the tension from the other tabs, the other connecting membrane. So what happens is You simply break one side of the tab and the tab will swing in, and you simply push the cable inside, and that will act as a clamp when you try to pull it back out. Now, I know that people have tried this and done this, and some say that it doesn't restrict the pulling it out, and I get that. But from the manufacturer's perspective, they believe that it puts enough tension on there that it's not going to pull out, and thus they're going to call it a clamp. Now, the AHJ may come along and say, I don't think so. I think it's a KO. And that's in their prerogative. But when you provide them with the information from the manufacturer, who, again, at the end of the day, 110.3b, okay, all of this stuff, that tab is part of the manufacturing process. If the manufacturer gives you something, and that's why I always tell people, don't be afraid to reach out to the manufacturer, because the manufacturer knows their products better than anybody. Don't try to outsmart the manufacturer. All right, they're the ones that are going to take the liability if they tell you to do something that's wrong. So they're not going to do that. They're going to attempt to give you the best information they can. So I don't know why people find it such a struggle to simply make a call to a manufacturer. It's a simple process. And so if the literature that is provided says that these are clamps, then me as an inspector, and I have been an inspector, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to go, okay, if you say it's a clamp, it's fine. And I'm going to say, that's fine. Go up to 12 inches. If you knock it all the way out, then I'm going to say, no, I need to have a securement within 8 inches. It's pretty straightforward. All I have to do is look at it. Now, back in the day when I installed the single nail-up boxes, I'm going to be honest with you, I just pounded out that tab and it was gone. It was gone. And in that case, it's a KO, and I'm going to put the staple within 8 inches. It's not that big of a deal. But the reason I brought this up is because it became a big deal when a gentleman posted a question about it, and I tried to explain it, and he went, just a yes or no answer. Well, all of you know, you don't come to my forums, you don't come to my websites for a yes or no answer. You get the in-depth analysis. At the end of the day, the AHJ is the one that's going to have to make the call. And if the manufacturer, in their literature, remembering they're the ones that produce the product, if they state that it has a clamp and it is the box you're using, then whether you like it or not, it's a clamp. As far as in the eyes of the code, it's a 110.3b. It's the manufacturer's statement. That's what it is. If it's all knocked out or removed, then it's a KO. Okay? So this really only comes into play on a single gang box. And as I tell people all the time, you do you. If you feel so passionately that it's a tab and it's a KO, then make sure that you're diligently securing that cable within 8 inches, because you need to practice what you preach, right? If you feel it's a clamp and you do it at 12 inches and an inspector rejects you, and you give them the document from the manufacturer that says that it's considered a clamp on these style of boxes, then he can say, well, it doesn't look like a clamp to me. And then they're going to start going into the code and say, well, it says it has to secure. Well, in the eyes of the manufacturer and their testing, it does secure. There's enough tension on it that they feel it secures it. I do tell people also, we're following the intent of the code. We're not overanalyzing it, and we're not recreating the wheel here. Do you think that in a wall, if you have a nail-up box and you remove one connecting edge of the clamp so that it's still there like a swinging door, you push in the cable, okay? You don't pre-push the tab in. You literally cut the tab and then you push the cable in. It should catch it enough to not pull out. It should have enough resistance on it. Do you really think it's going to move in the wall? I mean, really? So we can argue the semantics of 8 inches or 12 inches, but it's all about the tab. Now, again, if you remove the whole thing, okay, there you go. Secure it within 8 inches. If you leave the tab, you only remove one side of the tab. Usually the tab is connected on opposite sides with a little membrane to the box. And you simply break that tab on one side, then it acts as a spring retention, and that's what the manufacturers intended. And that's why they put on their literature that is considered a clamp. Whether you agree with it or not, whether you do your own testings and it pulls out, again, if it's in the wall, are people going to be pulling on it? If you're still securing the cable within 8 inches or 12 inches, is it going to move anywhere? No, it's not. And we ought to be thankful that people are even securing anything anyway. So, because I've seen some of the work on TikTok and Instagram and Trade Hounds, and it shocks me anyway that things don't burn down every day. So I would not sweat the small stuff, but I would use my golden rule here is if you knock a KO all the way out on a 2 1/4 by 4 inch nail up box, then you need to secure that cable with 8 inches. If you remove the tab, just one side and the tab is still there, and it's kind of like a hinged door, and you push the cable in and the tab is still intact, then I'm going to call it a clamp as long as the manufacturer has literature that says it's a clamp. And Carlons do say it's a clamp. Now, when it comes to Cantex, their design, that V-shaped design, makes it very evident that it's going to hold the cable. So it's a clamp. The others will say, well, the code says it has to secure the cable, right? So I'm sitting there going, okay, well, at the end of the day, when you're looking at the exception, it's only talking about when it's a KO. Other than that, as long as that tab is touching that sheathing and that sheathing is against the box, then it's connected to the box. It's secured to the box. Now, how secure do you want it to be? Okay, you can get into the semantics of that. Again, at the end of the day, it ain't going anywhere. So no sense in losing any sleep over that, right? So summarize this. I'm giving you my opinion that if you go to this nail up box and you knock that knockout out of that 2 1/4 by 4 inch nail up box, then it's a KO. Make sure you put a strap or staple or whatnot within 8 inches. If you want to go in and cut out one side of that tab so that it still has the spring retention on it, and you push that cable into it to make sure that you can go all the way up to 12 inches because the manufacturer calls that a clamp, then you do you and you can secure it at 12 inches. Me personally, I'm going to secure the damn thing within 8 inches so that I don't have to worry about an inspector saying it's a knockout or a clamp. What's the big deal? 4 inches. Okay, I'm just going to do it at 8 inches and I'm moving on. And that's the way I always did it, regardless. It's about, I never went up to 12 inches. And most of the time I was probably closer than 8 inches. But anyway, that's my thought on it. The debate can roll on. You can call it a tab. You can call it a KO. You can call it whatever you want. If the manufacturer calls it a clamp, and there is a specific way, and there are instructions out on the internet, how to remove one side of that tab with a razor knife, then it becomes a clamp based on that manufacturer's testing. And that's part of their listing. And that's why they'll put in there that it's a clamp. So, moral of the story, don't be afraid to reach out to your manufacturer, get some clarification if there's any question about it to ease your mind, to make you feel better. But at the end of the day, it could go either way. It's the AHJ's call. They have that authority. I would secure it within 8 inches and you don't have to worry about it either way. All right? All right, folks, that's all I got for that episode. You can agree to disagree. If you have any questions that you want covered here at Let's Ask Paul, just go to paulabernathan.com. I'd love to hear the questions from you. We will be answering a lot of questions also live on our Fast Tracks Live that starts June 28th at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. Make sure you can join us on all of your favorite social media platforms that we're attached to. So make sure you check it out. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless.